So, very good morning, everybody, on this ninth Zoom in our series called Voidness of Everything and Compassion for Everyone. Just a second. Just that. Good. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and also, of course, those joining on YouTube. So let's start with the appropriate, very best, joyful, happy, positive, loving, kind, spacious, expansive, inspired motivation of the Bodhisattva, where we know that this life is just one among many, many, many. And this is the one that's going to change everything so beautifully, so helpfully for us and for everyone through the unparalleled power of Dharma to help us transform our minds, our lives, everything we are. So that bit by bit, life after life, we can become like Buddha and like the great teachers in this world just now who inspire us. We take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the community of most noble minds. From this moment on until we reach the very heart of enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and all six transcendent virtues, may we reach total awakening and every enlightened quality to be able to truly help sentient beings so lost in samsara. May each and every one of those beings be well, live long, be healthy, be well provided for, have good friends and find respect. May they live in places of peace and plenty, and most of all, may they practice Dharma. May they create the causes for those good circumstances to be their wealth in future lives. May they be free from suffering and from creating causes of future suffering. May they discover the natural, sacred well-being totally beyond suffering and attain the great equanimity that's free of closeness or distance from anyone. Deyata shame shamawati shameta shatru Om kuri mare jite kaya ore te jowati oloyani bishudan male malapanaye Kukure kaka grase grasana omuki paramuki amuki Shame dawane sawa graha bandanane negri Hitva sawa bhava pravadina Vimukta marapasha savitva buddha mudra anugatita sava mare Putsarita parishuddhe biga shantu sava marakama. Glorious Guru, source of all blessing, ever present above our heads on lotus and moon seat, through your immense kindness, ever sustain us, that the blessings of body, speech, and mind flow from you, and we are one. A more intelligent way, maybe, of doing this course would have been to treat wisdom voidness, same thing, and compassion at the same time, a bit of one, a bit of the other, a bit of one, so that from the beginning we had the feeling of both of them being there. That's very hard to do. As you've seen when we've gone through the sunyata topic, it's been complicated enough and busy enough just trying to follow the evolution of ideas, because remember, in the very title of Khenpo's text, it is the progressive stages. So we're kind of following an evolution of understanding, of thinking, and we're also seeing, or we've briefly seen, how that was reflected in the evolution of Buddhist thought in India that later went to Tibet, how it took many centuries for that progressive unpacking, that progressive understanding of the Buddha's, what we call the Buddha's intention, what the Buddha really meant, to take place in India. So all of that's interesting. The history is interesting, very, very interesting, but we won't go there. But it is, because if you see it the way I presented it, then sort of humankind's understanding of the message the Buddha had brought gradually reached its fullness. It's like a flower growing, reaching its apogee. At last, all of it, in terms of words and philosophy and understanding and practice, was there for the general public. It had been there for individuals from the beginning, but there for everybody, especially in written form and as ideas that can be communicated. Now, the opposite of that, and the other stance, is, but this was the pure original teaching. You know, the way they got it in the 1st century, that's what the Buddha really taught, and all the rest is elaboration. Can you see the two ways of looking at it? Which is the authentic Buddhism? The way it gradually became understood and practiced more and more widely, or was it pure at the beginning and then the rest just added ribbons, bows, flashing lights, and maybe stuff that was in contradiction with the original message? So we have different Buddhist schools in the world who see things through different perspectives. And it's what we've been looking at, not in terms of history and schools and traditions, but looking at the very core of it. You know, how can we understand wisdom? What is the deepest wisdom? Wisdom for us is sunyata, it's understanding what is wisdom. It's what's illusion? What's the truth that's hidden by that illusion? What's like being asleep as opposed to waking up? What's it like to see a mirage as opposed to knowing it's a mirage? And so on and so on. So we've finished our journey through the progressive stages of sunyata, according to Khenpo Sotim Jamso's explanations. What we didn't go through, according to his explanations, was in parallel a series of meditation instructions so that we could spend time on our cushions trying to see how the Sautrantikas saw it, how the Vaibhashikas saw it, trying to get some of the experience. So that's part of Khenpo La's teaching. We haven't done that for various good reasons. We've just gone through the ideas. Now, isn't it interesting? We've gone through, 8 sessions, so that's about 12 hours of teaching. It's a lot of me talking, a lot of ideas, a lot of you thinking. And we've seen that so much of it is to tell us that the real truth is beyond ideas. It's very funny, isn't it? It's beyond anything speech can express. It's beyond anything the mind can think. You'll never think your way to enlightenment. You'll never sort it out like we sort out things normally with thinking. We get it all straight. It all makes sense. But they call it lining up your ducks. These ducks will never line up. And so, but nevertheless, we need that thinking. We need that correct thinking. It's called right thinking, to correct our wrong thinking. And then hopefully the right thinking will help us practice in a way that goes beyond thought. So we've explored the ideas whereby different Buddhist traditions have explained how they understood what Buddha was telling us about what is truth and what is illusion, what causes suffering, and how the truth will lead us to liberation. So it's nice to say that. It's a nice expression. The truth will take you to liberation. But then what's the truth? I remember talking once with Akon Rinpoche about precepts. Very basic Buddhist precepts, 5 basic precepts. One of them is not to lie. And I said, well, that's not too hard. And he looked at me with a very sort of funny expression. It was kind of a bit of pity, I suppose, and a bit of humor. And he said, oh no, well, not to lie. First you need to know the truth. And so the implication of it, it's easy for me not to lie, means, well, I know the truth, which is very presumptuous. But anyway, we've been exploring the way the different truths are, and we've put them in an order so we can see it goes from deeper to deeper. And often through seeing what's not quite right about the previous step, what's not quite right about seeing the world as other and made of matter and atoms, and that the mind is different from what is experienced. What's wrong with that? And then with mind only, what's wrong with saying it's all mind? And then in the middle way, different schools, and in particular the prasangikas who say, find out what's wrong with saying anything as the truth, because the truth is beyond words, but we can show how words are not right. So now all of that is blah, 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 or as many Tibetans say now, bala, bala, bala. It's a lot of sounds. It's amazing to watch people, foreign people, in a language you don't understand one sound of, talking with each other, especially if they're having an argument or a sweet conversation. There are these sounds coming out, and then the other person is kind of more and more like that, excited, worked up, angry, or sort of turning sweeter and looking starry-eyed. It's just, but for us, it's just blah, 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 blah. Just sounds. It's like, it's amazing when you start to understand a little bit about birds and warning signs and courting calls and so on. But you still can't really understand what they're saying. It's kind of, when they all start going certain sounds, there's probably a cat, walking through the garden, and it's an alarm call for everybody. But it's amazing when what was just noise, sound, has some meaning. But it's all bala bala bala. So what is it like? It's meaningful bala bala bala, and it's something that Buddhists have invested themselves in a lot. In Tibetan monasteries, then studying, and at the heart of the study is this understanding of sunyata. So that's really the very heart of why somebody is studying. It can take 6 years, 3 years crash course, 6 years good course, and in many Gelugpa study institutions, 9 years. 9 years, 50 weeks a year, every day. Can you imagine how much bala 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 that is? How many texts, how much talking, how much studying, how much debate, which is my bala bala is better than yours. So you see these Tibetans swinging their beads and clapping their hands and arguing with each other very quickly, very sharp-mindedly, all about ideas. Whether something gets a bit lost in all of those words and study or not is not for me to say. But the way it's presented very, very clearly, the way I understand it, the way it's been presented to me, is like maps and a journey. It's like information about the journey. It could be a map, it could be travel books. It's information about and the actual thing. It's not the same. So you need the maps. You need to know where you're going in order that the journey is successful, complete, as it should be. You need that information, and the information from people who've traveled there before, who say, oh, this is a good one, or avoid this, or this is the easiest way, that way looks easy, but it's not, and so on. You need the information of former travelers, you need the maps, you need to know about climate. I had a friend, some good Samaling friend, many of you know him, James, who cycled to India from the UK. So we were following him online, it was amazing. But you need to know what the weather's like, what the weather's going to be like. So you can't cycle there because there'll be snow by that time. So you need to get to here first and so on. You need the information. But if you've just got the information, then that isn't what the Buddha's intention was about. Unless you are enlightened now, you've got to change. Right? Something's got to change. Probably, in the end, everything's got to change. Change is not easy. The journey of change is a wonderful one, but one that needs to be handled ethically, skillfully, wisely. Many qualities are needed. We study all of those. So the Buddha intended us to change for the better, for ourselves, better for ourselves, better for everybody. That's the intention. So the knowledge is needed, but it's only relevant when it's put into practice. And so how we practice is another story. The wisdom that we're aiming for will never be achieved through study, no matter how much you study. And we need to practice, and the practice necessarily involves a change in ourselves, and in particular, finding what's blocking us up. When we understand something of the Buddha nature teachings, everything's there in this mind of ours. It's already there. We don't have to make it, construct it bit by bit. It's already there. The problem is that we can't access it. It's like when you buy a new computer. It's got so much. At one point, they were selling computers with so much stuff in them. stuff you usually didn't want. There's so much stuff. But if you don't know how to use it, then you have this learning curve where gradually you understand, oh, I can do this. Control C, I can copy. And I can do that. And gradually the treasures that have been locked up inside this box become apparent, and you become very good with it. Still, there are more things to discover that you can do. So our mind has everything. The problem is the access is blocked. It's blocked by what we call our mind poisons. Our ignorance, our involvement, our attachment, our upsetness and anger, frustrations, and so many things are blocking us. These are habits. Not our fault, they're there from this life, past life, they come from all sorts of places. We're very matter of fact about them. But a lot needs to go. So I want to share 2 quotations with you about the need for practice, so that we understand the relevance of all this thinking that we've gone through. The first is from Taisitupa. He says, diligent Dharma students hear many teachings, read many books, and learn the Dharma. What should happen as a result? They should have become calm and serene. They should be balanced, content, and at peace with themselves. It's a good sign that you've learned and that you know something about Dharma. But it doesn't mean pretending and playing a role like an actor on a stage. Any good actor can easily act like the Buddha or like Jetsun Milarepa. They can play many roles, even the role of a bodhisattva. But after the show is over, they're exhausted and they need to take a long rest. Being calm and serene isn't like that. Whether we are alone or together with others, it means being truly calm and at ease as a result of having gained knowledge, self-knowledge and learning. Whether anyone notices it or not, we're at peace and at ease. If we don't become calm and serene through having gained knowledge and learning, then the more we try and the more we know, the more egotistic and discontent we will be. These aren't good signs. They show that we haven't really learned anything. He says, I wanted to mention this so that you can examine for yourself whether you truly know the Dharma. It's a very valid point. We do need to know, we do need to study, but we shouldn't think that knowing the words, the facts, being on top of the ideas means that you've advanced in Dharma, that you have matured as a person, that you have become a bodhisattva. This was a problem throughout Buddhist history. People could, clever people especially, know so much and have all the information organized, be able to quote so many things. They would be Buddhist masters in a sense. But then that wasn't the Buddha's intention. So the second quote comes from Kamachame. And Kamachame, some of you may have heard of him. He was one of Tibet's most famous masters. He was both Kagyu and Nyingma tradition. A very strong link between Akon Rinpoche's history, previous lives, and his family and Kamachame. And even in this life, he and Kamachame's incarnation died on the same day. It's quite a strange coincidence. Anyway, so Kamachame was an amazing person, and perhaps one of his deepest texts is called a matri in Tibetan. Matri means written red. It's almost like written with your own blood. It's like a deepest testimony of what you think. So this one's called The Union of Mahamudra and Dzogchen. It's the most amazing text, and we had it taught in Samiling by the 18th Dumo Chuji Rinpoche, who's he's old now, but is an amazing contemporary master. So I had the pleasure of interpreting that and also seeing him later in Tibet. I really like him. He's the real deal, and wonderful teacher. So anyway, in there's this whole text, right? It's quite long, not that long, but it's quite long, about the fusion, or the sameness of Mahamudra, our deepest Kagyu teaching, and Dzogchen, the deepest Nimapa teaching. But the very first word, the very first verse is this. The sutras, tantras, and various scriptural traditions, that's what we've been studying, right, are many and vast. However, life is short and wisdom limited, so it would be hard to cover them all. One may know a lot, but not putting it into practice would be like dying of thirst on the banks of a great lake. It can happen that a common corpse is found in the bed of a great scholar. So this whole text, which is, there's so much in that wonderful text, the very way he starts it is like that. It's powerful. I find it very powerful. And then the words themselves, when you look more deeply, like dying of thirst on the banks of a great lake. There's just so much there, and it's right next to you, but you're not drinking it. You're not drinking it. So the whole reason for our study and trying to understand what sunyata really means is so that then we can, through our practice, discover that in real terms. And this will happen. And I think it was towards the end of the last talk that I mentioned something, which is that in Mahayana, practice, our practice, your practice, my practice, is our deepest gift of compassion to others. And when we think of compassionate help, we can think of feeding the hungry, helping the poor, and doing all sorts of things. But the finest gift, the most powerful gift of compassion to everyone else is to give yourself to practice. The practice. And then what happens through practice? Well, if all those teachings are like maps, it's like the actual journey. And that's wow. I'm remembering my first big journey, my first real big journey from England was to Dharamsala, overland. And so from somebody who hadn't, these days with cheap flights, people know the whole world. They just go here, go there. And it's so accessible. It wasn't like that when I was in my young 20s. And I'd only had experience of France, briefly. So discovering Europe and then Asia and then It's like going through these stages of Vaibhashika, Sautrantika. You discover what's so different from what was familiar. France and then Germany, and then you start to get towards Eastern Europe, Yugoslavia. It was communist bloc at the time. These amazing soldiers with big epaulets and huge greatcoats, and will they let you in? Will they let you go through? And you're there, hippie with long hair, and that kind of thing. But then you're going through Yugoslavia. It's so different. And then through, and then you get to Istanbul. And then Istanbul, it's just amazing, because you take this short boat ride and you've left Europe and you're in Asia. You've got suddenly little fires by the roadside, stalls, street vendors. In half an hour, you've made a quantum leap and you're in Asia. It's like going from Shravaka level to Bodhisattva level. You're in now the Chittamatrams. A new landscape. Then arid deserts. You cross Turkey, unmade roads going up mountains. And then Turkey to Iran. And then it's different again. You drive by Mount Ararat, where the arch of the Ark, Noah's Ark, is supposed to have landed. And it's just so different. Then you start to see the Hindu Kush mountains, the Karakoram. And you're driving round them. Then you're down on the Indian plain. And that's different again. And then you go up to the Himalaya and you drive up to Dharamsala. And you've got to these mountains. And then you go up above Dharamsala, up to Dhamkot, and you can see range upon range and range of mountain into Tibet. Without the map, you could have stopped in Yugoslavia and thought, this is really nice. God, it's better than UK, I'm going to settle down here. Or maybe fallen in love with somebody in Yugoslavia and then settled there. So it's terrific, Don't need anything else. So the map, the actual journey, the need for practice, and then practice brings it all to life. What on a map are contour lines? You just see lines very close to each other. When you get there, it's a huge cliff or a very, very steep mountainside. The map comes to life. So like with mind only, you become a bodhisattva. And already that's a big step, but you're a bodhisattva, you want to help people. You're engaged in helping them however you can, materially, and so on. But then, when you're actually doing it, practicing, living as a bodhisattva, feeding that practice on your cushion with all the bodhisattva thoughts and wishes, prayers, meditation, the more and more you help people, the more you realize the problem's the mind. How much this is all about mind. And so, don't need to spend 10 minutes telling you about that. But, people can have so much materially. They can have a beautiful roof over their head, wonderful food to eat. They can wear terrific clothing. They can have companions, good friends, good partner, nice family, and so on and so on. Live in a nice place, nice country. But it doesn't mean they're happy. Doesn't mean they're free. So, and we see that they're despite having all of that stuff, not just stuff, people, friendship, communication, status, they're respected, all these things we do in our prayer. They're called the 7 wealths of the world. They've got respect, they are loved, they have resources and so on. They're living long, they've got good health. But still, their mind makes them hurt. Their mind isn't at peace, as Taisitupa was talking about. They are not content. They're not content. Their mind, they're not at peace with themselves. Because they're not at peace with themselves, they're not at peace with all the rest of it. So the more we realize, mind, it's all about mind. And how true this thing of perception is. Their mind makes them perceive their world in a way which is aggressive, which is frightening, or it's too attractive. There's just so much to be had, you can't get enough of it. And you want more, and a bigger one, and a better one, or more of the same, and so on. A better class of luxury. That's never ending. It's all about the mind and how your mind creates the world you're in. So what we've been studying as theory, and then going on, through Chittamatrin, Middle Way, what they're saying about not understanding interdependence. And my gosh, what does interdependence mean? Karma, cause and effect. People, well, they don't get it. I'm assuming we're right, and there is karma, cause and effect, which is, why we're here. We're Buddhists, that's what we believe. What Buddha taught, it makes a lot of sense. But they can't accept, it's so hard to accept your own karma and the karma of the world around you. It's so hard. Wars, innocent victims. How can that happen? How can that happen? And even, and how to understand karma, that this is the comeback for the victims of what they've done in past lives. Very hard to understand karma, because we're not the same person who made the causes, but we're the same person who gets the results. We're the same stream of consciousness. We're not the same person that we were when we made the cause, but we're the same stream of consciousness that picks up the consequence. It's like when people early on in life, they get into debt. And then what got them into debt, they change personality, but they still have to pay back the debts. It's like me when I started smoking tobacco when I was 13, kid at school. I stopped when I took refuge. So for 11 years I was smoking. And then after that, and since then, I just cannot stand the smell of tobacco. When I smoked, when you get a whiff of tobacco, you get the longing. You want one. I remember being so poor, and you're looking through old jackets for little stubs of cigarettes where you might get a little kind of puff and a bit of relief. But then afterwards, once you're disintoxicated, and so my house in Scotland, it's about 100 meters from the official smoking spot. But it's still, if I walk out the back door, I can smell it. It makes me feel sick. So I'm a different person. But I've got cancer. And probably one of the causes of that cancer was the fact that I smoked 11 years when my body was young and vulnerable. I'm not the same person. But the stream of consciousness, body and mind, is the same. So understanding karma out there in the world, how can it be that innocent children are bombed, that people who've not done anything are victims? And how can whole nations become victimizers like that, subscribe to the killing and so on? It causes a lot of anguish if we don't understand karma, cause and effect. And we need a lot of wisdom to really understand karma, cause and effect. And it's not as though we just sit back and say, oh, no, it's their karma. We are compassionate. Because it is karma, and because people make karma not understanding interdependence, which is the middle way, is totally that. Sunyata and interdependence are interchangeable as words almost. Why does nothing exist in its own right as it seems to be? Because it really is the play of interdependence. Nothing exists on its own because everything depends. And the more we actually practice, put Dharma into practice, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, where we become aware of all of this, the next 4 great steps of practice and so on. When we practice in the beautiful way the practice is expressed stage by stage, then that map comes to life and we understand the depth of sunyata. And then once we've got that feeling, there's kind of turning it the other way. In terms of compassion, if I really want to help everyone in the way the Buddha helped, in the way Karmapa, Taisittupa, Dalai Lama help these bodhisattvas in our world, what do I need to do most? Is I need to go to the very heart of the meaning of sunyata. And the only place you'll do that is on your meditation cushion. Through meditation, there may come a time when you'll get help. We see in Zen stories, you get slapped with a slipper. But please note in the Zen stories, when they get satori, when they get a level of enlightenment, when their master hits them with a slipper or says something, it's not the first day they come through the door. Those happen to people who've been sitting on their butts for years looking at the wall, right? And through all of those years of practice, one day when they're ready, kaboom, somebody helps you and there's a breakthrough. But it's not when somebody pitches up for their first day as a Buddhist novice that the great master comes along and takes off his slipper and they're enlightened. It doesn't work like that. So we need help. But the only way we will understand sunyata, not conceptually, not understand in that way, where we'll get it. So if we go back to my journey, right? You needed to actually arrive on the Indian plains to taste the food. I think many of you have been to India. The whole feeling, the food, the people, the noise, the transistor radios everywhere. It's like all of that India experience. You live it. You live it. And you can have read books about it, you can have imagined it through reading the books, but it's not like when it's there all around you, 360 degrees, full Dolby stereo, live. And then when you get up on that mountaintop and you see Tibet, and maybe you've read Born in Tibet and heard about Trungpa Rinpoche and Akon Rinpoche's journey over the mountains, but then when you actually look, you think, gosh, they crossed that. And no wonder they almost starved to death. And hundreds did starve to death. You actually see it, reading about it, imagining it, but experiencing it is so different. And so our practice brings the meaning to life, and that meaning will lead to the deepest compassion. And in fact, in our Kagyu and Dzogchen traditions, there is one phrase which I think is, for me as a Buddhist practicer, the most beautiful Dharma phrase ever. It says, sunyata that has compassion as its very heart. Sunyata that has compassion as its very heart. You know, your heart. Sometimes with my blood pressure, I hear my heart beating all the time. It's like having a drummer next to you. Boom, 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 like this. This heart is beating and it keeps you alive. And as I've experienced, when you get a little heart attack and you think this is the end of it, you realize it's just when that stops, this whole story stops. It's incredible. This thing has been keeping the whole show going for 77 years. Boom, boom, boom. And then, end of story. For good. So, shunyata that has compassion as its very heart, as its beating heart. No difference between them. That level of shunyata. You can read about it, but you need to practice it. And especially in our traditions like Mahamudra, we do the foundation practices. We need to do prostrations, refuge, bodhicitta, vajrasattva purification, to deal with our past, and then mandala offering, guru yoga, to set up our wonderful future. In the guru yoga, we let the lineage blessing, which is the feeling of shunyata that has compassion as its very heart, we let that pour into us again and again and again. And then we get the Mahamudra meditation instructions. So that's the point of this transition talk. Now we're leaving the shunyata progressive stages to go to compassion, which we'll treat as compassion, as a topic, which is very well treated as such in the Buddhist teachings, but all the time knowing that compassion and shunyata, compassion and wisdom, need to be not just together. The text says it's not like black thread and white thread twisted together, two different things, but entwined, intertwined. They need to become one and the same thing. The wisdom makes you compassionate, your compassionate makes you cultivate, your compassion makes you cultivate wisdom. So if this goes well, and you've studied enough, and especially enough about shunyata, to sort of understand the map's clear in your mind, and then you practice, then some of the signs I mentioned earlier, through Taisitupa's quote, where he says you are at peace with yourself. When you meditate, become mindful of your mind, you will see there's just so much contradiction and conflict inside us. We're all like that. It's normal. That's human. There's so many conflicting ideas, conflicting feelings, and two sides. Like for most practices, there's one bit of you that really wants to spend years on the cushion, like Milarepa. There's another bit of you that wants to really taste life. So while you're tasting life, you're dreaming of being on the cushion. And when you go into retreat, you're thinking about being outside of retreat and meeting people and doing things. And so on. There's so much conflict inside us. And we're just not happy with ourselves being who we are. We can't accept our karma, our lot. We can't accept the fact that we've got limits. We want to be wonderful, and we are wonderful, but we are 29.5% wonderful, and we're not the 46.8% wonderful we'd like to be, and that we can see in others, and so on. There's so much. So that's a peace. Because of wisdom, we understand karma, cause and effect, many lifetimes that have made us who we are. We know where we're going. We know how much it would take. That's being wise about yourself. You do your best, but you accept yourself as you are. Acceptance doesn't mean give up, or it doesn't mean I'm always going to be like this, but it means this is my working material today. This is how far I got. That's like traveling too. It's on that long journey. You travel through difficult countries. When I travelled in 1970 to India, Iran was a difficult country to travel through. And when I travelled back with a girlfriend, it was even more difficult. Groping hands everywhere and nothing you can do because there's lots of them and they're strong and tough and they've got knives. So, difficult, really difficult. Difficult terrain, lots of deserts. You drive, there's dust everywhere, even with the windows shut. All your clothes, your whole body, everything in the vehicle you're driving is covered in dust. But that's where you are. And you've got to go through there to get to India, which is where you're going. We need to accept where we are on our journey. So this is all wisdom. So when it works, what the wisdom brings out, and as part of this being at peace with oneself, is a wonderful lightness. Lightness. It's compared to a ball of fluff blowing across a landscape. We don't get attached to anything or anyone. We have such clear wisdom about the life we're experiencing, what we're experiencing, and how we are the experiencer, and so on. It's so light. It's so beautiful. We don't get attached. And the more that wisdom, which is based on the sunyata teachings, where nothing exists as solidly as we thought, everything is this dream, it's this mirage, it's this rainbow of phenomena, changing all the time, then we don't get attached. We feel free and light, and we see how people are clinging so hard to each other, to their bodies, to possessions, to stuff, to ideas. And so that gives us amazing compassion, because that doesn't need to be. If only they could understand sunyata, they could not hurt so much. So now, having ascended the different levels of sunyata, now let's skydive back to earth and start from the bottom with compassion and work up step by step, compassion for everyone, and go up to the heights of compassion from the very beginning. So, I'm just checking my own notes. I want to stay on track. Yeah, so now we get a very classical, talking about stages, right? We had stages of realization of sunyata, now stages of development of compassion. Traditionally, there are 3, but in fact there are 4, because The first one is kind of taken for granted. So let's treat it as 4. The basis, let me just give you the titles so that the structure is clear. Loving kindness leads to compassion, which leads to bodhicitta. That's the classical presentation. Or the other way around, there won't really be bodhicitta without compassion, and there won't really be compassion without loving kindness. So we've got to develop loving kindness first. That leads to compassion, and the compassion will lead us naturally to bodhicitta. But the basis for the loving kindness in the first place is mindful awareness. It's awareness, but mindful awareness describes it better. It corresponds to a Tibetan term which is shibshin. There's a word for mindfulness in Tibetan, drempa. There's a word for awareness, which is shipa, and this is mindful awareness, shibshin. Mindful awareness means becoming more and more aware of others and their lives, and their joys and their sufferings, and caring. So it's not the topic of this talk, but those who've done stuff with me over the last couple of years will know this is familiar territory we studied when we did a mindfulness course, Buddhist mindfulness. So in Buddhist mindfulness, there are 3 things which are described as like 3 poles of a tent. 2 poles, you can't do a tent, right? Bloop, it falls one way, it falls the other. 3 poles is a minimum you need for a tent. Then you can stretch your canvas around it. And those 3 poles hold each other up. So if one collapses, the others collapse. But together, in a balanced way, they make a very solid foundation. For those of you who are engineers, you will know the wonder of 3 legs. A 3-legged table works everywhere. It always works. Triangulation, it works. A 4-legged table only works on a flat surface. And, as you know, when the surface isn't flat, if your table's going to be there for a few years, you need to saw the legs a little bit, or you need to build up the floor. 3 legs is amazing. It always works. Anyway, that's not the teaching today, but it's an interesting thing for engineers. So 3 tent poles that hold each other up are care, mindfulness, and awareness. They need each other, they help each other, they feed and support each other. The care is that we do care. We care for others. We have the ability to care, which is like the beginning of a fire. It's like lighting a match. And then we can make that ability to care better and better. It's like a fire that's spreading. So that initial fact that we can care for somebody, and things do move us, and we are concerned when somebody's suffering. And we can care for those we love. We can look after them. This is a starting point. You need that. We need to have loving care. And to care when things go wrong. To care that we will bother to do something to help out. So care is one thing. Awareness is the second thing, which is where we are just awake and aware in the moment. We are not totally gone in our own stuff all the time, in our own heads, in our own world, in our own needs, where everyone else is just wallpaper. It's like wallpaper in a room. It disappears. You don't see it after a while. It's just there. So awareness is, we know what's going on with this person we work with. We're aware that they're hurting or they're happy and so on. And family and neighbors and people we meet. Like in my local pharmacy, there are teams of people who serve. In the afternoon, there are 3. Nice tall guy, very friendly, nice to have a conversation with. There's a red-headed lady who's super sweet, and she always gives you a nice smile. And then there's one who's dry, looks sour, minimum conversation. You try and smile at her, and she looks away like this. She's the one for compassion. It would be very easy to be compassionate for the redhead. She's a sweetie. She's really nice. That would be too easy to feel kindness and care for her. But that other one, obviously, she's not got a happy life. So anyway, you're aware. You go to the shops, but instead of just going to the shop because you want pills, if it's the pharmacy, I need my pills, and there's just somebody who's serving, you actually see the person, feel the person without being too kind of intrusive, but you're aware. And it moves you, it touches you. So this awareness is very direct. In secular mindfulness is what they call mindfulness often. Being, aware in the moment, just there, without bringing your own stuff. They say without judgment and so on, but judgment apart, without being judgmental. It's just being open to what's there rather than bringing all your own stuff to it. That's called awareness in Dharma. And then mindfulness actually means memory. It means you don't, in fact, it means you don't forget. It's a negative. You don't forget the Buddha's teaching about what you're being aware of. So you're not bringing your own stuff to it in a judgmental way, your personal Ken stuff, but the eyes which are being aware in this moment are seeing, backed up by the wisdom of the Buddha. That's called mindfulness. The word in Tibetan, drempa, for mindful, that's translated as mindfulness, actually means recall, remember. And it means we remember Buddha's teaching on impermanence, karma, cause and effect, interdependence, on our emotions and so on. So these 3 together, care, awareness and mindfulness. As we follow our bodhisattva journey, make us more and more aware of the world we're in. And caring to do something to help it. And that leads to love, loving kindness. So love is an English word. And it has many resonances. We fall in love. So here we're looking at rising in love, right? Humans fall in love, bodhisattvas rise in love. Nothing's falling here. Everything's getting better, going up. It's on its feet and it's walking forward. No detours. So this is Maitri in Sanskrit, metta in Pali. So let's I have to say love, but we're meaning what the Buddha meant when he used those terms, metta, maitri. And it's the extension of what I talked about, it's the actual care for others in action. So let's look very briefly how it works. When you love somebody, it's not very kind to say it, but it's probably true that through the power of our history and our past lives, we are quite self-centered. By self-centered, I mean that if with one of these incredible modern computers, maybe something that invent 20 years from now, and every Buddhist will have it as a must-have, that it will know your every thought and feeling, and at the end of the day, it will give you a count. You know, like people who do walking, and they say, today I did 10,000 steps, because their computer's just been bouncing up and down on their arm or in their pocket. So this would tell you, today you had 30,000 self-centered thoughts about me, what am I going to eat, what am I going to do, me and my life, and me and my and I, and all of this. And you had 350 caring thoughts for other people. And then as you went out shopping, particularly we see a little graph, a peak, 3 o'clock, you went out shopping, you saw that dog, you saw that bird, you saw that person, then you had feelings of, care and compassion, concern, interest. So it's just to say that when we start out on the path, there's a lot of self-centeredness. Our thoughts are about me, my life, how to make it work, how to make it more comfortable, better, happier, whatever it is. Getting what we want is called getting what we want. Getting our own way as much as we can. So when we love somebody, something incredible happens where that care we had for ourselves, it's like a shell breaks open and their life becomes real for us. They no longer become wallpaper, an object, a character in our story that we want to use in some way, even albeit subtle. Even you just have a nice moment, a smile, because we like smiling. We feel good. Have somebody you can have a smile with, basically because smiles make you feel good. It gets complicated. So when we really love somebody, the shell breaks open and they're real. You feel their life, you feel their hopes and their fears, you feel what they do, their illnesses, where their body doesn't work correctly, and then their story, their family story, what's real for them becomes real for you. And it matters, and you want to do something to help them. Does this make sense? Can people nod if it makes sense? It's really like a shell. The shell of ego breaks open and another living sentient being becomes tangibly real for you, and you are concerned and you want their happiness even more than you want your happiness. If you've got one square of chocolate left, you'd rather they had it than you had it, that kind of thing. Their happiness, their well-being counts for you, and their suffering hurts you, and you're concerned. You can't just wave it off. So that will only happen if we're aware. That's shell breaking. The awareness of other, mindful awareness of other leads to the care, and that care becomes love. And then we need to learn how to make that love pure. I can remember she used to say, being that loving everyone doesn't mean being in love with everyone. And loving somebody doesn't mean being in love with somebody. In a way, it's so different. So our love is for their, let's put it in technical terms, their stream of consciousness that now has become real to us. It's like next to my house in Samiling, there's a river. That river you're aware of. You don't want to throw rubbish into it. You don't want to pollute it. You don't want to make it worse. And then we have this stuff in Tibetan Buddhism, dutsi, blessing substance. It's called dutsi, blessed by lamas and so on. We want to put that in there to bless the fish, the insects, the worms. Then that will go all the way down to the sea, and so on. We want to put something long-term useful into the other person and not harm or damage them in any way for our own interest. That's the pure love. Of course, we can't do it overnight. We have a history, but we need to know where we're going. This respect for other, respect for their stream of consciousness. So no matter what they're like now, if they're a sour person in a pharmacy, who you're waiting in a queue, so you're kind of thinking, hope I don't get that one, and then that customer's finished. This one's taking a long time. Will I get this one? Will I get the nice one? Will it be a smile or a sour grin? There. You're not concerned with just who's there right now. You're concerned with their situation right now. But that person has been your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, your lover, your child in past lives, over and over again. It's the oldest friend you could ever meet, each person. And that person is a future Buddha. You're seeing them for their potential to become at peace with themselves, to become light and radiant and unattached, liberated. That's the mind stream that you're becoming aware of. And of course, their present situation, if you can help, then that's wonderful. So that love is defined as wishing happiness on other, but not just that, wishing them the causes of happiness, because we understand karma, cause and effect, and that for their real long-term happiness, these 7 things we had in our prayers, long life, good health, and friends and respect, living in places of peace and plenty, and so on. All of those good things, they will only get as a result of good karma. Good karma is like seeds, causes. So we're wishing them to use their life now to plant good seeds so that the harvest they'll have in future lives will be wonderful, and they can have meaningful, fruitful lives. So we're wishing them happiness, but not just now, for the long term. So this is like a silly example, maybe not true. Be careful with examples. People can always find fault with examples, So, but anyway, it's like a parent telling the child, it's time to come in from the kicking the football around now. You have to do your homework. Bah. Another 5 minutes, another 10 minutes. No, you already had another 5. So you're not making them happy in the moment. Happiness in the moment is 5 more minutes kicking a ball around. But you're concerned for their education, for the longer term, knowing that if the homework's going to help, then that's what they need to do. Or maybe the other way round. Maybe your child is too passionate a studier, and you say, you've got to stop reading and studying for the moment. Get out and kick a football, go out and run a little bit, because your body needs it. Your mind needs a break. Your mind needs to alternate to something else. So they say, no, and they're really into what they're reading. Harry Potter, they're on the 25th book of Harry Potter and whatever he got up to next. And you say, no, you need to get out there and breathe and run around. Whatever it is, long-term welfare and immediate welfare are not necessarily the same. So our loving care for others has a long-term perspective. Long-term perspective. And there's so much to be said there, but I'll leave you to think about that because I need to get on in this template. Okay, so mindful awareness leads you to care for others. That care is defined as longing for them to be well, in all the senses of well, and to be creating the causes of their well-being in the future, their welfare, their own welfare. We want people to be independent so they can look after themselves intelligently, wisely, and all those around them. So then the next step from the loving awareness that we've got so far is to realize, it's all mind, and human minds are weird. They're weird. We're all weird. I'm as weird as anybody, and perhaps even weirder. It's a good job you don't see inside my mind. You just get these talks. You wouldn't come back if you could see inside Ken's mind. But anyway, that's my own private basement to work with. So you're in my very nice reception room, which is a nice smiley place to be. So anyway, we realize that weirdness of human mind means that if you have 9 reasons to be happy right now and 1 reason to be miserable, what will your mind focus on? You're human, you're alive. You've got a nice roof over your head, you've got food in the fridge, and you've got friends and this, or you've got toothache. What does your mind keep going to? The food in the fridge, the roof over your head? No, the toothache. Or, I'm not sure my boyfriend loves me so much anymore. He's not acting like he did last week. And we obsess. We keep fixating on what hurts. There's a good side to it. If something's good, if you've got a stone in your shoe, then you need to concentrate on that, because it's better to stop and take it off, take it out, than to carry on walking and cut your foot. There's a to a certain extent, there's a human need to fixate on the problems, because we need to sort them out. Otherwise they build up or they get worse or whatever. But the weirdness of the human mind is that it can not be happy as long as it's suffering. It cannot appreciate all of life's gifts. And as Taisutapa says, be content. Be happy with what one has when there is some cause of suffering. So it says that love develops into compassion, and compassion is defined as longing for the other, to be free of suffering and free from making causes of future suffering. So there the focus is not the other person's well-being and wanting to bring welfare into their life. is the focus on their suffering, what's wrong in their terms, what's wrong in their lives, and how that is hurting them. So that, and then that's compassion, first steps. It's compassion as a state of mind. But then in the bodhicitta teachings, which are very elaborate and extensive on compassion, we see compassion has two aspects. State of mind, which is what we normally mean by compassion, but compassion in action, which means the way we live our life, which is compassionately, helpfully, and in particularly removing suffering and the causes of suffering. Removing suffering and the causes of suffering. So this happens, when you love someone. And let's take a very good example, not being in love with somebody, because that always gets complicated. Let's take the example of parents' love for a newborn child. That's crazy love and compassion, right? You've got this being that's come into your world and that's going to be there for the rest of your life. And going to be very much there for the first, 18, 20 years of you, coming 18, 20 years of your life. Total stranger. An unknown quantity. You'd never buy that off Amazon. Think how much it's going to cost you for the next 18 years to look after a child and educate it. Think of all the problems that might come. And mystery Amazon package, it will cost you all of this much. Do you want to buy one? Or buy one, get one free? It's a mystery. Some of the texts talk about this. There was one very famous teacher, Katyayama, in the time of Buddha, was very clairvoyant. And he turned a corner and he stopped in his tracks. He looked amazed. And there was a woman who was breastfeeding her child, and she was just finished eating a fish. So she had the bones of a fish in her hand that she was giving to a dog. And he could see who the dog had been in past lives in relation to that person, who the fish had been that she just finished eating, how the child that she was holding to her breast had been her worst enemy. And he said, karma, But when you have a baby, then everyone, they go bananas, they're all kind of, ooh, like this. And it's partly because they can't respond. It's not like grown-ups, where you never know how they're going to react to you. Babies are just there, so you can express love without any problem. But also there is naturally a feeling for this new being that's coming into the world, especially from the parents. They want to make it happy, to give it food and so on, and they're very concerned when it hurts, when it's crying, when it goes wrong, when it gets sick, and so on. They're very aware that it can't be a happy, smiling baby as long as it's hurting. It's hurting because it's hungry, because its teeth are coming through, or whatever it is. It's a very kind of good example. We realize there can't be real happiness. There can't be contentment while there is a lurking suffering that has a hold on the other person's mind and their life. So then, because we must finish this sequence this morning, awareness has led you to love others. The love has led you to compassion, where you're aware of where they hurt. And, when you love a human being, you become friends, or you fall in love. But first is wanting to have sweet times together, have good times together, make presents to each other. But as you get to know each other, it's understanding where the trouble is and trying to help get rid of the trouble, the problems. And that goes deeper and deeper. It can become quite psychological. You can become a lifetime companion for somebody because of that. So compassion, but then the last step, compassion leads to bodhicitta. And when we talk about wisdom and compassion, we really mean bodhicitta by compassion. So we think, we care so much, more and more, for more and more beings, animals, human beings. We really want to give your life to making life better for everybody. So you think, well, what can I do? What can I do? Me, simple old me, what can I do? And then when we look through the range of possibilities, or if you do the sums, or these days if you asked, I don't know, I'm not sure what the answer would be, but if you ask AI, who benefited the world the most in the whole history, the whole known history of humankind, who would it be? And for us, the conclusion is Buddha. Of course, many people have helped humankind in all sorts of ways. Caring people, doctors, scientists, politicians who've made great, useful social changes, and the ones who invented the wheel, if that was a good idea in the end or not. Lots of people have helped. But who helped the most? And for us, it's Buddha, no doubt about it. One life, Buddha had 3 robes, a begging bowl, a walking stick, that's all. Yet in his own lifetime, he directly benefited a sangha of ordained people around him, more than 100,000 people. The populations, lay people he moved through, but through his teaching. How many people since the time of Buddha have been helped? 2,500 years. Billions upon billions of people have learned to make their minds and their hearts better and to help each other, be kinder to each other, be more generous, more caring. And each person who becomes truly a bodhisattva, on the bodhisattva path, they make other people become bodhisattvas. There is no end to it. All from one person and the realization that he achieved with his mind. He was rich before he left the palace. He didn't do it with money. He didn't have any. He didn't do it with his body. He only had one body. You can't be everywhere helping people physically. Buddha's heart, mind, so pure, so clear. So, those two, pure, clear, so caring for everybody. He gave the world the finest gift it's ever received. So then we think, if I really want to help everyone, what's the best thing I can do is become Buddha. And then the added bonus, it's the best thing you can do for yourself. Because it means your mind is as wise. And what do we value? We value wisdom. We respect our wisest humans. No one can be more wise. We respect kind, caring, compassionate humanitarians. You can't be more kind and loving than Buddha. We respect people who are at peace. You go to a funeral, rarely you hear somebody say, I never heard an unkind word from that person in their whole life. You think, my goodness. Well, they can't say that about me. But you can't be more kind than Buddha. So for yourself, there's nothing better you could ever wish for. So we long to become Buddhas. And that's called bodhicitta. And bodhicitta has two aspects, like the two aspects of compassion. One is keeping alive that inspiration, that motivation to become Buddha. We call that aspiration bodhicitta. But that state of mind is the basis for actually living it. And here we come back to the journey analogy. It's only by living compassion with other people that we actually grow as bodhisattvas. We need to experience other people. We need to experience what it means to help them. When we try to help them, then we start to realize the need for wisdom. Because often when we try and help people, it can be a bit of a mess, or it doesn't work out as well as we expected. You can never be wise enough helping others. So we learn through the activity of helping others. It's the only way. It's like walking the actual path of the journey. You can't learn and develop the real compassionate action. It's a training. It's an apprenticeship like anything else. If you see these wonderful people who work with wood or work with metal. They can turn it into all sorts of shapes and furniture and things. They acquire those skills with their hands through practice. We acquire our skill of helping others through practice. You can't just do it in your head and on books. So it's a long journey to enlightenment. And the main thing is developing bodhicitta in action and keeping the motivation pure and clear. So that's where we stop for today with our kind of introduction to compassion as a bodhicitta. So let's dedicate anything that was good and useful today. Part of our compassionate activity is turning anything that was good into endless bodhicitta before something goes wrong. Quick, before we spoil it with egotism or anything. May whatever virtue was created by this session contribute to the state of omniscience being attained. By the main enemy, mind's defilements, being completely defeated. Through that, may each and every sentient being become free from the ocean of existence, troubled by the waves of rebirth, aging, sickness, and death. May this precious bodhicitta arise in those in whom it's not arisen. In those in whom it has arisen, may its development know no setbacks. And may it increase ever more and more. Through this virtue, may we quickly achieve Mahamudra and establish every single sentient being in that same accomplishment. Thank you very much. Your turn. If you've got any comments you'd like to add or questions you'd like to ask.
Thank you for. Yeah, that's right.
I have a question, and it kind of goes off what you were just saying, so I think it might be a good time to ask it.
Yeah, go ahead. Thanks.
So, I'm trying to be a good bodhisattva in training, and when I took my vows and I put on robes, suddenly I was amazed at how many people came up to me and wanted me to help them. And a lot of the times this kind of looks, it's small and it's easy and people just want to make a connection and they just want to be heard and chat. And that's great. I love that. But a lot of the time, people who are really seriously suffering, um, want me to be able to help people who are dealing with a lot of mental illness or homelessness.
Mm-hmm.
And at the beginning, I had a pretty open heart, like you were describing with love. And I tried to take it in and I tried to understand and I tried to help. But it became clear very quickly that I have no idea what I'm doing, really, and that I can't help at all in the majority of cases. So I guess it's a really big question, but do you have any advice about how to stay open when the situations are so large that we just don't know what we can do?
Mm. Yeah, compassion in action is, well, it's like I said, it's where we actually learn what it's all about. The difference between the idea, which is beautiful, and the actual reality of helping people and what we can and can't give. In Vajrayana, it's something we work on very much on a one-to-one basis with our own teacher, because in a big view, there are times in a student's life, if we use the word student or practitioner's life, whatever, when the best thing they can do is to withdraw and meditate and practice and gain more stability inside themselves, about themselves, and deeper wisdom about mind, the nature of mind, the whole nature of life, because then that enhances their skill sets for dealing with other people. It won't come through directly. It's not as though what you understand on your cushion and in your retreat or practice time, you'll be able to share with them, but it will make you a more stable, a more profound person who find the answers for them in their cases. Depending, because you won't always find the answers, but you'll be better at it than you were before. So sometimes for practices, it's a teacher's job to send them back to the cushion or give them priority to the cushion, let's say. At other times, it's the opposite. It's the time to get out there, to learn through dealing with people without there. What your teacher would teach you in that will mainly come from the paramita of forbearance, often called patience, because that is precisely about coping. So you can't learn about coping until you see where you can't cope and why you can't cope. And there is no easy solution. There aren't words, stories you can tell yourself, catchphrases, do this, Anila, do this, Anila, you'll be okay. It's not that simple. We need to learn where we see where we can cope, where we can't cope so well, and where we burn out after a while, or where one person is a real challenge for us. And we want to help, and somehow there's a connection, there's a relationship, but we have to recognize we just don't have the skills. We need to hand over to somebody else, or we need to be honest with the person, very, very honest about what we can and can't do. It's like me as a Dharma teacher, one of the big things is learning to say, I don't know. I honestly don't know. When somebody's really looking to you for an answer, and you could fake it, but that's not good. So the dialogue with a teacher, and you see there will be endless people out there to help. And in this life, your future lives, there's no end of people. There's no end of challenges, and they can be deeper and deeper in some ways. So it's very important, whether we succeed or whether we fail with somebody, that we learn through that particular engagement. This being wiser about ourselves is not self-indulgence, it's our investment for everybody. So there the mindful awareness comes back, how we get involved. Usually the pain is the way we're getting involved with the situation, what we're bringing from our side. And so a constant review of that, a healthy review. We don't need to beat ourselves up all the time and all the time be looking for, where am I going wrong? What am I thinking wrong? What am I saying wrong? We need to be relaxed, but we need to be very, very honest. And that self-learning process, as we are trying our best to help others, is the real investment, and is what would take us through. I was hoping to mention it today, but it will be next time, the Bodhisattva vow, when we say, just as the Buddhas of the past set their hearts on enlightenment and then practice the path stage by stage. We will only go stage by stage through that, becoming more honest with ourselves in so many ways. And then the world out there is like a mirror, and in Vajrayana we get this, comes up so much as an example. Life is a mirror in which we can learn. So that's a long topic, it's a long answer already, so I won't go any further with it, but it's sort of pointing you in those directions. I don't know if that helps.
Thank you. Yeah, that's very helpful.
Actually, in that, I mean, it's all where we're coming to in compassion has to be the first 5 paramitas. So generosity is the first step, where you are actually willing to help. You want to give of yourself, of your time, of your skills to help somebody else. As we start doing that, that leads us naturally into the second paramita, which is right conduct, where we realize how we need to be so pure, so ethically right in dealing with others, because situations are complicated and other people are complicated and life's complicated. And I mean, you can do obvious things, giving food to the hungry, shelter and so on. That kind of work is wonderful. It's needed. It's a prior basic work. But it's the easiest is when you're dealing with other people's minds and their difficulties coping. That's where it starts to get complicated. So we need to be very ethical. We learn pure conduct in that. And then that leads naturally on to the forbearance and the diligence, and in the end meditation, because we realize that we can only give to others from the depth that we ourselves have. And this is wonderful to see our own, for me in my life, to see the different Dharma teachers I've met. And they're not clones, they're not all the same. There is fantastic difference between some who are admirable bodhisattvas, but they don't have the depth of this one, and he doesn't have, or she doesn't have the depth of that one. And then when you get to the ones who are our famous teachers, and you start to feel where they're coming from, what they've matured inside, how peaceful and stable they are, and how wise they are about karma, and how that makes them give such incredible advice to people. So we can see how the paramitas lead one into the other, and how we need the meditation to get that depth. And that's where what we've been studying so far, sunyata, the 6th paramita, prajna paramita, comes in, because once we have meditation experience, it's very important to blend it so skillfully with those prajna paramita or sunyata teachings.
Again, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about a certain order, about loving kindness coming first and then compassion next.
Mm.
What happens if just through life experience that let's just say that you have more experience of the suffering side than the loving kindness side?
Mm-hmm.
Surely one can focus on the wishing people not to suffer, which will in itself engender the loving kindness, surely, as a result, will it not?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you wouldn't care if you didn't love them. You wouldn't be wanting them not to suffer. These teachings. When you get to know so many of the Buddha's teachings, they are a rough template, and it's not that it absolutely has to happen in that order. Some people, their bodhicitta just awakens through the power of past lives, and they don't need to work hard on loving. Because when we practice loving kindness, there's very clear meditation instructions. You do this, you visualize this, and so on. And then same with compassion meditation. There's a whole set of instructions. And if you do them, they should help. They work for most people. So we get the rough template because there's a logic to it, and that's the way it is for, let's say, the majority. But it's only a template in practice, and that's why we have teachers usually. How that will awaken for different people depends on very much on their karma, their past lives, and for instance, on their karma. People can be born in places of such suffering, in families of such suffering, in situations of such suffering that's in their face from the very beginning. And for others, it's not the case. Some people, like the Buddha's life is an amazing, extreme example. How he was sheltered from seeing all suffering until a certain age. And certainly in life, some people, they have happy childhoods and lives that are very, very cushioned for their first, till they're grown up. So, yeah.
You can work with the strengths of your life. Like, if human beings haven't been that good an experience or an awful experience within this lifetime, I think raising loving kindness would be very difficult in that regard.
Yeah, but then the teachings help because if we kind of understand karma and rebirth and what's behind it all and where it is now, but the potential of all of that to become something else, this unkind, self-centered people can become caring people. And then our love for them is wanting wherever we can to help that happen, to inject something into the world around us so that people do care more. That's we can love individuals, but we can also love everybody in the sense that we want to make a deteriorating world a kinder world. I think that's an expression of love as well. Certainly in the Buddha's teachings about loving kindness, we're thinking all the time about past lives and how even our worst enemy, who is the most unkind person to us in this life, has been kind to us in past lives. That's how we think of it. So whether that's true or not, we can't go back and see. But as a remedial thought, which gives us a different perspective on somebody and helps us feel a potential of, it was like that then, it's like this now. How could it be in a better future? It gives us a broader mind in relation to those other people, because we only experience them for what we experience of them in this life or in this moment. So if you believe those teachings, then they're very helpful for the loving kindness. So the first step, is to see, do I believe in karma, past lives, and the extraordinary way it's presented. So you can actually look on a very nasty piece of human work, the people who are causing so much damage in our world today, with a Buddhist love for them, love for the core of them that's holds their potential, not the surface of them.
Yeah, I think it's about for me, I was really relating to a feeling, whilst you can intellectually understand and appreciate these ideas of loving kindness and compassion. I'm currently working with trying to engender an actual, link it up to a heart feeling in me. And I'm struggling with the loving kindness part, but I can seem to be able to access it via a compassion part, having experienced a lot of suffering and not wanting another person to have that. Do you see what I mean? I'm just finding
that's a definition of love in itself. You just said it. Not wanting the other person to have that is because you care for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason it's presented in an order is because one doesn't just lead to the other, it's that the other it leads to necessarily incorporates it, so that compassion has to incorporate love. The very fact that you care for taking away somebody's suffering means you care for them. So that is love. And then when we get to bodhicitta, bodhicitta has to include compassion and loving kindness. It's not like we leave the one to go to the next. It's a question of maturity. So that's good. Compassion includes loving kindness. Okay, I think that silence means see you next week. And yeah, we've got a next week. We're just at the beginning of a month. So we've got a whole month of compassion now. So we've done the dedication. Wishing you all the very, very best. And see you soon.
Thank you, Ken. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much,
Cheers,
Ken.
Ken. Thanks very much.
Have a great
Very much, Ken.
try,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, everyone.